The diplomatic conference room aboard the human Trill Joint Space Station falls silent as Sarah, the Trill ambassador, exclaims, "Wait, human males have two spherical organs down there?" All eyes turn to Andrew Mitchell, the 28-year-old human diplomat now frozen in place, his hand still clutching a napkin pressed against Sarah's dress where he'd spilled his drink moments ago. Andrew's face flushes red as he scrambles for a response. The room's atmosphere, previously thick with tension from hours of negotiations, now crackles with an entirely different energy. Admiral Zhao, the 55-year-old head of the human delegation, clears his throat, attempting to regain control of the situation. "Perhaps we should return to the matter at hand," Zhao suggests, his voice strained. But Sarah, her blue eyes wide with curiosity, ignores him completely. "Is it true?" she presses, leaning closer to Andrew. "You have two... what do you call them?" Andrew swallows hard, acutely aware of the dozens of eyes fixed on him. Testicles," he manages to croak out. "Or, colloquially, balls." A ripple of murmurs sweeps through the Trill delegates. Matriarch Zara, the stern 70-year-old leader of the Trill High Council, raises an eyebrow, her interest piqued despite her efforts to maintain a stoic demeanor. Sarah's hand, still resting against Andrew's hip from their earlier collision, twitches slightly. "Fascinating," she breathes. "And what is their purpose?" Andrew's mind races, desperately searching for a diplomatic way to explain human reproduction. "They're part of our reproductive system," he says carefully. "How does it work?" Another Trill delegate chimes in, leaning forward in his seat. Admiral Zhao interjects, his tone forcefully cheerful. "Perhaps this presents an opportunity for greater cultural exchange," he suggests. "Clearly, there's much we can learn from each other." Matriarch Zara nods slowly, her eyes never leaving Andrew. "Indeed, it seems our understanding of human physiology is lacking." Zhao seizes the opening. "What if we were to establish a more comprehensive exchange program? Say, 6 months? We could send a representative to live among the Trill, fostering better understanding between our species." The room buzzes with excited whispers. Zara considers for a moment before nodding. "Agreed, and I believe we have the perfect candidate for our liaison." Her eyes flick to Sarah, who straightens in surprise. "Me?" Sarah asks, her hand finally dropping from Andrew's side. "Yes," Zara confirms. "Your curiosity seems well suited to the task." Zhao's gaze settles on Andrew, a glint in his eye. "And I believe Mr. Mitchell here would be an excellent representative for humanity." Andrew's stomach drops as he realizes the implications. 6 months on an alien world, serving as a living exhibit of human anatomy. He opens his mouth to protest, but Zhao's warning glance silences him. As the meeting adjourns, Andrew finds himself standing next to Sarah. She turns to him, a mix of embarrassment and excitement on her face. "I look forward to learning more about your balls," she says, stumbling slightly over the unfamiliar word. Andrew nods weakly, wondering how he'll survive the next 6 months. As he watches Sarah walk away, he can't help but notice the graceful sway of her hips, the delicate spots trailing down her neck. He shakes his head, reminding himself that he's here as a diplomat, not a biology teacher. Little does he know that this awkward encounter will be the first step in a journey that will reshape human-Trill relations forever. The next 6 months loom before Andrew like an eternity as he boarded the interstellar transport bound for Trill Prime. Sarah sat beside him, her excitement palpable as she peppered him with questions about Earth and human culture. Despite his initial apprehension, Andrew found himself warming to her genuine curiosity and infectious enthusiasm. As they disembarked at the bustling spaceport on Trill Prime, Andrew was immediately struck by the diversity of alien species milling about. The air hummed with a cacophony of languages and the whir of advanced technology. He stumbled slightly, caught off guard by the planet's stronger gravity. "Are you all right?" Sarah asked, steadying him with a hand on his arm. Andrew nodded, trying to regain his composure. "Just adjusting to the gravity. I'll be fine." As they made their way through the crowded terminal, Andrew's luggage chose the worst possible moment to malfunction. The lock sprung open, and a cascade of his personal items spilled onto the polished floor. To his horror, several pairs of his underwear skittered across the smooth surface, drawing curious stares from nearby Trill citizens. Sarah, ever inquisitive, scooped up a pair of boxer briefs before Andrew could stop her. She held them up, examining the fabric with fascination. "What are these garments, Andrew? They seem intimate." Andrew's face burned as he hastily gathered his belongings. "They're, undergarments. We wear them beneath our clothes for support and hygiene." Sarah's eyes widened with interest. "Fascinating. Do all humans wear these?" "Most do, yes," Andrew replied, stuffing the offending articles back into his luggage. "Can we discuss this somewhere more private?" Noticing his discomfort, Sarah nodded and helped him repack. They made their way to a waiting hover transport, which would take them to the Trill Cultural Exchange Center. As they settled into their seats, Andrew felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. The combination of the different atmosphere and stronger gravity was taking its toll. Sarah noticed his pallor and reached into her bag. "Here," she said, offering him a small iridescent capsule. "It's a nutritional supplement we developed to help off-worlders adjust to our environment. It should make you feel better." Andrew hesitated, eyeing the alien pill warily. But as another wave of nausea hit him, he decided it couldn't be worse than how he felt now. He swallowed the capsule dry, grimacing at its bitter taste. The hover transport glided smoothly through the alien cityscape, its sleek architecture a blend of organic forms and advanced technology. Andrew found himself mesmerized by the unfamiliar sights, momentarily forgetting his discomfort. Upon arriving at the Cultural Exchange Center, they were greeted by a tall, striking Trill woman with piercing green eyes and intricate spots trailing down her neck and arms. She introduced herself as Dr. Lana Zev, a xenobiologist specializing in comparative alien anatomy. "Welcome to Trill Prime, Mr. Mitchell," Dr. Zev said, her voice carrying a note of hardly restrained excitement. "We're thrilled to have you here. Your visit presents an unprecedented opportunity for us to study human physiology up close." Andrew shifted uncomfortably. "Study?" Dr. Zev nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, we've prepared a series of medical examinations to further our understanding of human biology. I trust you'll cooperate fully. It's vital for fostering better relations between our species." Trapped by diplomatic necessity, Andrew nodded reluctantly. "Of course, I'm here to promote understanding between our peoples." Dr. Zev led them to a state-of-the-art medical bay. The room was filled with equipment Andrew couldn't begin to comprehend. At Dr. Zev's instruction, he changed into a form-fitting bodysuit designed to interface with their scanning technology. As Andrew lay on the examination table, Dr. Zev activated the scanner. A holographic display sprang to life above him, showing a detailed 3D model of his body. Sarah, assisting with the procedure, gasped softly as she observed the intricacies of human anatomy. "Remarkable," Dr. Zev murmured, manipulating the display to zoom in on various organs. "The similarities and differences between our species are fascinating." Sarah leaned in closer, her eyes wide as she studied the holographic representation of Andrew's reproductive system. Her cheeks flushed a deeper shade of blue. "It's so different from ours," she whispered. Dr. Zev, noticing Sarah's reaction, smiled knowingly. "Sarah, I'd like you to catalog the differences between human and Trill physiology. It will be an excellent learning opportunity for you." As the day progressed, Andrew found himself subjected to a battery of tests. Physical examinations, reflex assessments, and cognitive evaluations blurred together. Throughout it all, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. His body tingled with unfamiliar sensations, which he initially attributed to the alien environment. During a physical fitness test, however, it became clear that something extraordinary was happening. As Andrew ran on a high-tech treadmill, his speed and endurance far exceeded what should have been possible for a human. When he effortlessly lifted weights that would have challenged even the strongest Earth athletes, Dr. Zev's excitement reached a fever pitch. "Incredible," she exclaimed, frantically taking notes. "Your performance is off the charts, Mr. Mitchell. It seems the combination of our atmosphere, gravity, and perhaps the nutritional supplement has triggered some latent genetic potential in your species." Sarah, however, looked concerned. "Is this safe?" she asked, watching as Andrew completed a set of acrobatic maneuvers with inhuman grace. Dr. Zev waved off her concerns. We must press on. This could revolutionize our understanding of human biology. As night fell, an exhausted Andrew was finally allowed to retire to his quarters. His body hummed with residual energy, despite the day's exertions. Sarah insisted on accompanying him, worry etched on her features. I don't like this, she said as they entered his room. We don't know what these changes could mean for your health. Andrew sank onto the edge of the bed, running a hand through his hair. I'm sure it's fine, just need some rest, that's all. Suddenly, a sharp pain lanced through his lower abdomen. Andrew doubled over, gasping. Sarah was at his side in an instant, her hand on his back. Andrew, what's wrong? He couldn't respond, the pain intensifying. Sarah frantically called for medical assistance. Within moments, Dr. Zev burst into the room, her earlier excitement replaced by grave concern. As Andrew writhed on the bed, Sarah clutching his hand, Dr. Zev quickly assessed his condition. Her eyes widened in realization. The supplement, she muttered. It's having an unforeseen effect on his reproductive system. Andrew's vision began to blur as the pain reached a crescendo. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Sarah's terrified face and Dr. Zev's hands moving urgently over a complex medical device. In the depths of his fading awareness, Andrew couldn't help but wonder if this unexpected turn of events would bring their species closer together or drive them irreparably apart. Apart from consciousness, Andrew drifted in a sea of discomfort. Voices filtered through the haze, urgent and concerned. He caught fragments of conversation. Unprecedented reaction, genetic reconfiguration. Notify the council immediately. Gradually, the pain subsided, replaced by a tingling warmth that spread through his body. Andrew's eyes fluttered open, squinting against the bright lights of the medical bay. Dr. Zev loomed over him, her face a mixture of concern and hardly restrained excitement. Mr. Mitchell, she said, her voice softer than he remembered. How do you feel? Andrew took a moment to assess his condition. Despite the lingering ache in his abdomen, he felt different, stronger somehow, more alert. I'm okay, I think, he managed, his voice hoarse. What happened? Dr. Zev exchanged a glance with Sarah, who stood nearby, worry etched on her features. The nutritional supplement I gave you had an unexpected interaction with our atmosphere, Sarah explained, her voice trembling slightly. It triggered some sort of change in your physiology. Before Andrew could process this information, Dr. Zev launched into a rapid-fire explanation of his condition. Her words washed over him in a torrent of medical jargon, but he caught enough to understand the gravity of the situation. His body was changing, adapting to produce genetic material compatible with both human and Trill DNA. As Dr. Zev spoke, Andrew became aware of Sarah's presence at his bedside. She had taken his hand in hers, her touch sending a jolt of electricity through his system. He met her gaze, seeing a mix of fascination and concern in her eyes. I need to inform the High Council, Dr. Zev announced, already moving towards the door. This discovery could change everything. Left alone with Sarah, Andrew struggled to sit up. She immediately moved to assist him, her hands gentle but firm. Easy, she murmured. You've been through a lot. Andrew nodded, suddenly acutely aware of every point of contact between them. Sarah's spots seemed to shimmer in the light, drawing his gaze. Thank you, he said softly. For staying with me. Sarah's cheeks flushed a deeper blue. Of course. I couldn't leave you alone, not when... She trailed off, her eyes widening as she took in his appearance. Andrew, your eyes. Before he could ask what she meant, the door burst open. Matriarch Zara strode in, flanked by several members of the Trill High Council. Among them, Andrew noticed a stern-faced man whose gaze seemed to bore into him with barely concealed hostility. Mr. Mitchell, Zara greeted him, her tone formal but not unkind. I trust you're feeling better? Andrew nodded, instinctively straightening his posture. Yes, thank you, Matriarch. The stern-faced man stepped forward, his lips curled in a barely perceptible sneer. I am Dax Wren, he introduced himself. I must say, Mr. Mitchell, your condition raises some concerns. Before Andrew could respond, Dr. Zev returned, accompanied by a team of human scientists. At their head was a woman in her mid-30s, her sharp eyes taking in the scene with keen interest. "Admiral Zhao sent us as soon as he heard," the woman said, stepping forward. "I'm Dr. Elena Chen, xenobiology expert. We're here to assist in studying Mr. Mitchell's condition." The room erupted into a flurry of activity. Andrew found himself subjected to a battery of tests, his body scanned and sampled in ways he'd never imagined. Through it all, Sarah remained by his side, her presence a calming anchor in the storm of scientific fervor. As the day wore on, Andrew began to notice changes in his body. His senses seemed sharper, colors more vivid. He could hear conversations from across the room with perfect clarity. When Dr. Chen asked him to perform a series of physical tests, he found himself moving with a grace and strength he'd never possessed before. "Fascinating," Dr. Chen murmured, reviewing the results. "Your cellular structure is adapting at an unprecedented rate. It's as if your body is evolving in real time to thrive in this environment." While the scientists marveled at his condition, Andrew caught sight of Dax Wren engaged in a heated discussion with matriarch Zara. Though he couldn't make out the words, the tension in their body language was clear. As night fell, the scientists finally allowed Andrew to rest. Sarah insisted on staying with him, setting up a makeshift bed in the corner of his room. As they settled in for the night, Andrew couldn't shake the feeling that something momentous was on the horizon. "Sarah," he whispered into the darkness, "what's happening to me?" She was silent for a long moment before responding. "I don't know, Andrew, but whatever it is, we'll face it together." As Andrew drifted off to sleep, he was unaware of the commotion outside. In the corridors of the Cultural Exchange Center, Dax Wren met secretly with a group of Trill purists, their whispered conversations filled with plans of sabotage and dire warnings about the threat Andrew posed to their way of life. Meanwhile, in the building's botanical gardens, the plants nearest to Andrew's room began to stir. Leaves unfurled at an accelerated rate, and flowers bloomed out of season, their petals shimmering with an otherworldly light. The changes happening within Andrew were already starting to affect the world around him, setting in motion a chain of events that would challenge the very foundations of human-Trill relations. The night passed uneventfully, but as dawn broke, the Cultural Exchange Center erupted into a flurry of activity. Andrew awoke to the sound of raised voices echoing through the corridors. He sat up, his enhanced hearing picking up fragments of heated debates and urgent discussions. Sarah stirred in her makeshift bed, her eyes meeting his with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Something's happening," Andrew said, his voice low and tense. "I can hear arguments. A lot of them." Sarah nodded, her bioluminescent spots pulsing with a newfound intensity. "I feel it too. There's unrest, anxiety." As they prepared to investigate, Dr. Lanazet burst into the room, her usual composure replaced by impossibly strong agitation. "Mr. Mitchell, Sarah, you need to come with me immediately. The High Council has called an emergency session, and your presence is required." The trio hurried through the bustling corridors, passing groups of Trill citizens engaged in animated discussions. Andrew's enhanced senses were overwhelmed by the cacophony of voices and the palpable tension in the air. They arrived at the High Council chambers to find the room in chaos. Matriarch Zara stood at the center, her authoritative voice barely audible above the din of shouting counselors. Dax Wren, his face contorted with anger, led a faction of Trill who were calling for immediate action. "We cannot allow this human to remain on our planet," Dax Wren bellowed, pointing an accusatory finger at Andrew. "His very presence is a threat to our way of life." Matriarch Zara raised her hands, attempting to restore order. "Counselor Wren, we must approach this situation with caution and wisdom. Mr. Mitchell's condition presents an unprecedented opportunity for both our species." As the debate raged on, Andrew found himself at the center of a political storm. He could feel the weight of countless eyes upon him, some filled with fascination, others with fear and hostility. Sarah stood beside him, her hand finding his in a gesture of solidarity. Outside the council chambers, the situation was equally volatile. Through the ornate windows, Andrew could see crowds gathering in the streets. Trill citizens carrying signs with pro-human slogans, faced off against groups of purists chanting for isolation and preservation of their culture. Dr. Elena Chen arrived with a team of human scientists, their presence adding another layer of complexity to the already tense atmosphere. She approached Andrew, her eyes widening as she took in his appearance. "Mr. Mitchell, your transformation appears to have stabilized," she said, her voice a mix of professional interest and genuine concern. "How are you feeling?" Before Andrew could respond, a commotion near the entrance caught everyone's attention. A group of Trill purists, their faces twisted with anger, attempted to force their way into the chamber. Security personnel rushed to intercept them, but not before one of the intruders hurled a small device towards Andrew. Time seemed to slow as Andrew's enhanced reflexes kicked in. Without thinking, he stepped in front of Sarah, shielding her with his body. The device clattered to the floor at his feet, emitting a high-pitched whine. In that instant, Andrew felt a surge of power unlike anything he had experienced before. His body moved on instinct, becoming intangible as the device detonated. The explosion passed harmlessly through him, leaving him unscathed. The room erupted into pandemonium. Security forces swarmed the area, apprehending the would-be attackers. Dr. Chen and Dr. Zev rushed to Andrew's side, their scientific curiosity momentarily overriding their shock. "Incredible," Dr. Zev murmured, running a handheld scanner over Andrew's body. "You appear to have developed the ability to alter your molecular density at will." As the initial chaos subsided, Matriarch Zara seized the opportunity to address the council. "What we have witnessed here today only reinforces the need for cooperation and understanding between our species. I propose the formation of a joint human Trill research team to study Mr. Mitchell's condition and its effects on our world." The proposal was met with a mix of approval and skepticism. Dax Wren, his face flushed with anger, stormed out of the chamber, followed by a group of his supporters. As the council debated the details of Matriarch Zara's proposal, Andrew found himself drawn to a nearby window. The botanical gardens below caught his attention, their vibrant colors more intense than he remembered. Plants seemed to be growing at an accelerated rate, their leaves unfurling and flowers blooming before his eyes. Sarah joined him, her gaze following his. "It's not just you that's changing," she said softly. "Your presence is affecting our entire ecosystem." Andrew turned to her, noticing for the first time that her bioluminescent spots were pulsing in perfect sync with his heartbeat. He reached out, gently tracing the pattern of spots along her arm. A jolt of electricity passed between them, and suddenly, Andrew could sense Sarah's emotions as clearly as if they were his own. Their moment of connection was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral Zhao and his diplomatic team. The Admiral's expression was grave as he surveyed the scene. "Mr. Mitchell," he said, his voice low and urgent, "we need to talk. The situation here has become far more complex than we anticipated." As Andrew prepared to follow the Admiral, he caught sight of a group of unfamiliar individuals entering the chamber. Their sleek attire and calculating gazes set them apart from the politicians and scientists. One of them, a woman with piercing green eyes, locked gazes with Andrew for a moment before disappearing into the crowd. Unbeknownst to Andrew, Sarah, or any of the officials present, the arrival of these corporate spies from Galactic Corp marked the beginning of a new and dangerous phase in the unfolding drama on Trill Prime. As the various factions maneuvered for advantage, the true impact of Andrew's transformation and its potential consequences for both humans and Trill remained yet to be fully revealed. Understood, yet to be fully grasped by those gathered in the council chambers. As Admiral Zhao led Andrew away for their urgent discussion, Matriarch Zara seized the moment to address the assembled council members and scientists. Her voice, though calm, carried an undercurrent of excitement and grit. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, "in light of recent events, I propose the formation of a joint human Trill research team to study Mr. Mitchell's condition and its effects on our world. This unprecedented collaboration will allow us to pool our knowledge and resources, potentially unlocking new avenues of scientific discovery beneficial to both our species." The proposal sparked immediate debate among the council members. Some voiced enthusiastic support, while others expressed skepticism and concern. Dr. Elena Chen stepped forward, her eyes bright with scientific curiosity. "If I may, matriarch," she said, "I believe this proposal has tremendous merit. The changes we've observed in Mr. Mitchell are unlike anything we've encountered before. A joint research effort would significantly accelerate our understanding of this phenomenon." Dr. Lana Zev nodded in agreement. "I concur. The potential benefits of this research extend far beyond Mr. Mitchell's individual case. We may be on the brink of a breakthrough in interspecies compatibility." As the council deliberated, Andrew returned with Admiral Zhao. The admiral's expression was grim, but he nodded respectfully to Matriarch Zara. "We support your proposal, Matriarch. The situation here has indeed become more complex than anticipated, and cooperation is our best path forward." With growing consensus, preparations for the joint research team began in earnest. The Cultural Exchange Center buzzed with activity as a state-of-the-art laboratory was hastily established. Equipment was transferred, protocols were developed, and security measures were enhanced under Admiral Zhao's watchful eye. Andrew and Sarah found themselves at the center of this whirlwind of activity. As the primary subjects of study, they spent long hours in the laboratory, undergoing a battery of tests and examinations. Dr. Zev and Dr. Chen led the research efforts, their excitement palpable as they delved into the mysteries of Andrew's transformation. During one particularly intense session, Andrew discovered a new facet of his evolving abilities. As Dr. Chen adjusted the environmental controls for a stress test, the system malfunctioned, causing a sudden and dangerous spike in temperature. Alarms blared as the room rapidly heated up. Scientists scrambled to shut down the system, but the controls were unresponsive. Equipment began to smoke, and Sarah cried out in discomfort. Without thinking, Andrew stepped forward, his body responding to an instinct he didn't fully understand. He felt a surge of energy coursing through him, and suddenly the oppressive heat seemed to dissipate around him. The air shimmered as he created a pocket of cooler temperature, extending it to encompass Sarah and the sensitive equipment. "Fascinating," Dr. Zev murmured, her scanner whirring as she analyzed Andrew's new ability. "You appear to be manipulating your body temperature at will, and even projecting that effect into your immediate surroundings." As the crisis subsided and systems were restored, the implications of Andrew's new power became clear. His ability to withstand and counteract extreme temperatures opened up new avenues of research and potential applications. Sarah, too, was undergoing changes. Her bioluminescent spots, once a static pattern, now shifted and pulsed with vibrant colors. Dr. Chen observed that the changes corresponded to Sarah's emotional state, creating a mesmerizing display that captivated both human and Trill researchers. "It's extraordinary," Sarah said, examining her arm as the spots rippled with a soft blue light. "I can feel everything, everyone's emotions. It's like a symphony of feelings all around me." As the days passed, the research team made significant progress. They successfully isolated and synthesized the enzyme responsible for Andrew and Sarah's transformations, naming it Mitchellium in honor of Andrew. Initial tests on cellular samples showed promising results for potential interspecies compatibility. However, unbeknownst to the team, their groundbreaking work had attracted unwanted attention. Galactic, a powerful interstellar conglomerate, had taken notice of the Mitchellium research. They saw the potential for immense profit in controlling such a revolutionary compound. In a dimly lit office far from Trill Prime, a Galactic executive met with a Trill scientist named Dr. Vex Toran. The scientist's eyes glinted with ambition as he reviewed the dossier before him. "You understand the importance of this mission, Dr. Toran?" the executive asked, her voice cold and precise. Toran nodded, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "Perfectly. I'll infiltrate the research team and acquire the Mitchellium formula. My credentials as a government oversight officer are impeccable. They'll suspect nothing." As Dr. Toran prepared to embark on his covert mission, another threat was brewing on Trill Prime. Dax Wren, still seething from his defeat in the council chambers, met with a group of like-minded individuals in a secluded location outside the city. "The human's presence is an abomination," Wren growled, pacing before his assembled followers. "Their research is already causing ecological changes that could doom our world. We must act before it's too late." The group, a mixture of Trill purists and eco-terrorists, nodded in agreement. They began formulating plans to disrupt the research project and force the humans off their planet. Back at the Cultural Exchange Center, Andrew and Sarah found solace in each other's company amidst the constant tests and scrutiny. One evening, they escaped to the laboratory's observation deck, seeking a moment of peace. As they stood together, looking out over the shimmering lights of the Trill capital, Andrew felt a surge of emotion. He turned to Sarah, struck by the way her spots glowed with a soft, pulsing light that seemed to match the beating of his heart. "Sarah," he said softly, reaching out to trace the pattern of spots along her arm. "I don't know what I'd do without you through all of this." Sarah's eyes met his, her newly enhanced empathic abilities, allowing her to sense the depth of his feelings. Without a word, she leaned in, and their lips met in a tender kiss. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. A surge of energy passed between them, causing their bodies to glow with an intense, otherworldly light. The observation deck's systems flickered and sparked, and for a brief instant, it felt as if the very fabric of reality around them rippled. As they pulled apart, both gasping in surprise, the facility's power grid stabilized. Andrew and Sarah stared at each other, a mix of wonder and confusion on their faces. "What? What just happened?" Sarah whispered, her spots now pulsing with a vibrant, swirling pattern of colors. Before Andrew could respond, the door to the observation deck slid open. Dr. Zev and Dr. Chen burst in, their eyes wide with excitement. "We detected an enormous energy surge," Dr. Chen said, her handheld scanner already whirring as she approached Andrew and Sarah. "What were you two doing?" As Andrew and Sarah exchanged a hesitant glance, neither noticed the figure lurking in the shadows just outside the observation deck. Dr. Vex Torin, newly arrived and already gathering intel, watched the scene unfold with keen interest. He touched a small device hidden in his ear, whispering quietly, "Control, this is Torin. I think I've just witnessed something that could change everything. The subject's emotional connection appears to amplify the effects of the mycelium enzyme. This could be the key we've been looking for." As Torin slipped away to report his findings to his Galactic Corp handlers, the stage was set for a new phase of research, intrigue, and potential conflict. The true nature of Andrew and Sarah's bond, and its implications for both humans and Trill, remained to be fully explored. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance, with forces both seen and unseen maneuvering to control the outcome. The revelation of Andrew and Sarah's powerful connection sent ripples through the research team, as news spread of their ability to amplify the mycelium enzyme's effects. The pace of work at the Cultural Exchange Center accelerated dramatically. In the days that followed, Andrew and Sarah found themselves at the center of an increasingly complex web of scientific inquiry and political maneuvering. Dr. Zev and Dr. Chen worked tirelessly, pushing the boundaries of their research with each passing hour. 2 weeks before the scheduled Trill referendum, a breakthrough occurred during a routine examination. Dr. Zev's eyes widened as she analyzed the latest batch of test results. "This is extraordinary," she breathed, her spots pulsing with excitement. "Andrew, your body is now producing an enhanced version of the mycelium enzyme. It's more potent, more stable. I'm calling it Mycelium Plus." Andrew sat up on the examination table, his brow furrowed. "What does that mean for the research?" Dr. Chen stepped forward, her tablet displaying a complex array of molecular structures. "It means we may have just unlocked the key to true interspecies compatibility. The potential applications are staggering." As word of the discovery spread, the atmosphere in the research facility grew electric with possibility. However, not everyone viewed this development as cause for celebration. In a darkened room on the outskirts of the Trill capital, Dr. Vex Toran received an urgent transmission from his Galactic Corp handlers. The executive's voice crackled with impossibly strong excitement. "This changes everything, Torin. We need that formula, and we need it now, whatever it takes." Torin's eyes narrowed as he formulated his plan. "I'll make my move tonight. The night shift has fewer personnel, and I should be able to bypass their security protocols." However, Torin's confidence proved misplaced. As he attempted to access the secure lab where the Mycelium Plus samples were stored, he found himself face-to-face with an unexpected obstacle: Captain Marcus Stone. The human security chief's enhanced reflexes allowed him to react with lightning speed, pinning Torin against the wall before he could reach for his weapon. "I've been watching you, Doctor," Stone growled, his cybernetic eye glowing faintly in the dim light. "Your credentials may have fooled some, but not me." As Toran was led away in restraints, the wheels of corporate machination ground into motion. In a plush boardroom light years away, Galactic Corp's directors convened an emergency meeting. "Gentlemen," the CEO intoned, her voice cold and precise, "it's time we took a more direct approach. Authorize the deployment of the architect and his team. We will acquire the subjects themselves if we must." While corporate forces gathered in the shadows, a more immediate threat emerged on Trill Prime. Dax Ren's eco-terrorist allies launched a coordinated series of attacks on research facilities across the planet. Alarms blared as lab equipment was destroyed, and valuable data was lost in carefully orchestrated acts of sabotage. In the aftermath of the attacks, Trill news networks were flooded with images of destruction and panicked scientists. Dax Ren seized the moment, appearing on countless broadcasts to stoke the flames of fear and doubt. "This is the price of our misguided collaboration," he thundered, his spots dark with anger. "The humans bring nothing but chaos and destruction to our world. We must put an end to this madness before it's too late." As public opinion began to sway against the human-Trill partnership, Admiral Zhao knew they needed a bold move to regain trust. He strode into Matriarch Zara's chambers, his uniform crisp and his expression determined. "Matriarch," he said, bowing slightly, "I have a proposal. A Trill colony world was recently struck by a massive earthquake. If we send Andrew and a joint team to assist in relief efforts, we can demonstrate the tangible benefits of our cooperation." Zara considered the Admiral's words, her fingers steepled before her. After a moment, she nodded. "A risky move, Admiral, but one with great potential. Make it happen." Within hours, a team was assembled. Andrew and Sarah found themselves aboard a sleek Trill vessel, hurtling through space toward the stricken colony. As they approached the planet, the true scale of the disaster became apparent. The colony's once gleaming cities lay in ruins, great fissures scarring the landscape. Aftershocks continued to rock the planet, sending plumes of dust into the atmosphere. As soon as they touched down, Andrew sprang into action. Using his enhanced strength and phasing abilities, he moved through collapsed structures with ease, pulling survivors from the rubble. Sarah's empathic powers proved equally valuable. She moved among the rescued colonists, her spots pulsing with soothing patterns as she helped calm their fears and assess their conditions. During a particularly challenging rescue, Andrew made a startling discovery. As he strained to lift a massive piece of fallen debris, Sarah placed her hand on his shoulder to offer support. Suddenly, he felt a surge of energy coursing through him, his strength doubling in an instant. "Sarah," he gasped, easily lifting the debris clear, I think I can share my abilities with you when we're in physical contact." The implications of this revelation were profound. Working in perfect synchronization, Andrew and Sarah accelerated the pace of the rescue efforts dramatically. News of their heroic actions spread rapidly across Trill space, capturing the imagination of millions. As the mission drew to a close, it seemed that public opinion was shifting back in favor of continued human-Trill collaboration. However, even as Andrew and Sarah basked in the glow of their success, a new crisis was unfolding on Trill Prime. The accelerated plant growth triggered by Andrew's presence had reached a critical point. A massive, rapidly evolving fungal network began to spread across the northern continent, its tendrils reaching out with alarming speed. Dr. Elena Chen stood before a holographic display of the affected area, her face grim. "The mycelium enzyme is interacting with native Trill flora in ways we never anticipated. If we can't find a way to control this growth, it could destabilize the entire ecosystem." As Andrew and Sarah's ship approached Trill Prime, they received an urgent transmission from Admiral Zhao. His typically stoic features were etched with concern. "We need you back at the research facility immediately," he said. "The situation here has escalated." But as their ship entered Trill's atmosphere, alarms suddenly blared throughout the vessel. A sleek black craft had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, matching their trajectory perfectly. Before anyone could react, a blinding flash of light filled the cabin. When it faded, Andrew found himself face to face with a figure clad in advanced combat armor, a featureless mask hiding their features. "Mr. Mitchell," a modulated voice intoned, "you'll be coming with us now." In the chaos that followed, Andrew caught a glimpse of Sarah being dragged away by another armored figure. He tried to phase through his captor's grasp, but a strange energy field seemed to nullify his abilities. The last thing Andrew saw before losing consciousness was Captain Stone, his cybernetic implants sparking as he fought desperately against the intruders. Then darkness claimed him, and he knew no more. Andrew's world exploded into chaos. The ship's interior became a blur of motion and flashing lights as the armored intruders swarmed through the cabin. He struggled against his captor's iron grip, desperately trying to phase through the energy field that nullified his abilities. Across the cabin, he caught a glimpse of Sarah's terrified face as she was dragged away by another masked figure. "Sarah!" he shouted, but his voice was drowned out by the cacophony of alarms and the sounds of struggle. Captain Stone fought with fierce persistence, his cybernetic implants sparking as he engaged multiple attackers at once. But even his enhanced abilities were no match for the sheer number of assailants. Andrew watched in horror as a stun blast caught the captain square in the chest, sending him crumpling to the floor. The last thing Andrew registered before a wave of darkness claimed him was the cold, modulated voice of his captor. "Sleep tight, Mr. Mitchell. Your talents are required elsewhere." When Andrew regained consciousness, he found himself in a sterile, white room. The air hummed with the sound of advanced machinery, and bright lights glared down from the ceiling. As his vision cleared, he realized he was strapped to an examination table, surrounded by an array of intimidating medical equipment. "Sarah?" he called out weakly, his throat dry and raw. "I'm here, Andrew," came a faint reply from somewhere to his right. "Are you okay?" Before he could respond, a door hissed open, and a familiar figure strode into the room. Dr. Vex Torin, his face set in a mask of cold commitment, approached Andrew's table. "Mr. Mitchell," Torin said, his voice dripping with false civility, "welcome to Galactic Corp's premier research facility. I do hope you'll forgive the rather abrupt nature of your arrival." Andrew struggled against his restraints, anger flaring in his chest. "Where are we? What have you done with Sarah?" Torin's lips curled into a thin smile. "Your companion is quite safe, I assure you. As for your location, let's just say we're far beyond the reach of your Trill and human allies." Over the next several days, Andrew and Sarah were subjected to a relentless series of tests and experiments. Torin and his team of scientists probed the limits of their abilities, pushing them to the brink of exhaustion. Blood samples were taken, brain scans were conducted, and their physiological responses were monitored under increasingly stressful conditions. During a rare moment of respite between tests, Andrew found himself alone in his cell, his body aching from the day's ordeals. He closed his eyes, trying to center himself, when suddenly a familiar presence brushed against his mind. "Andrew, can you hear me?" His eyes snapped open in shock. It was Sarah's voice, but her lips hadn't moved. She was staring at him intently from her cell across the corridor. I can hear you," he thought back, concentrating hard. "How is this possible?" "I don't know," Sarah's voice echoed in his mind. "But I think our bond has grown stronger. We can use this to our advantage." As the days wore on, Andrew and Sarah honed their newfound ability to communicate telepathically. They shared information about the facility's layout, the routines of the guards, and the patterns of the security systems. All the while, they felt their powers continuing to evolve under the stress of captivity. One night, as Andrew lay awake in his cell, he noticed a faint flicker in the lights above. Concentrating hard, he realized he could sense the flow of electricity through the walls. With careful focus, he managed to disrupt the power to the security camera watching his cell. Across the hall, Sarah had made a discovery of her own. By projecting her empathic abilities, she could influence the emotions of the guards, sowing confusion and discord among the Galactic Corp staff. Their opportunity came during a shift change, when Sarah's emotional manipulation had left the guards distracted and disoriented. Andrew used his new electromagnetic abilities to short out the lock on his cell, then quickly freed Sarah. "We need to move fast," he whispered as they crept through the dimly lit corridors. "There's a database terminal 2 levels up. If we can access it, we might find a way out of here." Navigating the labyrinthine facility proved challenging, but their combined abilities gave them an edge. Andrew used his phasing power to slip them through locked doors, while Sarah's empathic senses warned them of approaching guards. When they finally reached the database room, Andrew's fingers flew over the keyboard, searching for anything that might aid their escape. What he found, however, left him stunned. "Sarah, look at this," he breathed, gesturing to the screen. "Galactic Corp has been collecting data on other alien species with unique biological traits. This goes way beyond just humans and Trill." Before they could delve deeper into the files, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Their escape had been discovered. "We need to get to the hangar bay," Sarah said urgently. "It's our only chance of getting off this rock." As they raced through the corridors, they could hear the sounds of pursuit growing closer. Just as they reached the entrance to the hangar, a familiar voice stopped them in their tracks. "I'm afraid your little adventure ends here," Dr. Torin called out, flanked by a team of heavily armed security personnel. Their weapons hummed with scarcely controlled energy, trained squarely on Andrew and Sarah. Andrew stepped protectively in front of Sarah, his hands crackling with electromagnetic energy. "It's over, Torin. We're leaving, and we're taking your precious data with us." Torin's eyes narrowed dangerously. "I think not, Mr. Mitchell. You see, you and Ms. Laren are far too valuable to simply let go. The secrets locked away in your DNA could reshape the balance of power in the galaxy, and Galactic Corp intends to be at the forefront of that revolution." As tension mounted in the hangar bay, the distant sound of explosions suddenly rocked the facility. Torin's head whipped around, confusion etched across his face. "What in the—" he began, but was cut off as the hangar doors exploded inward in a shower of debris and sparks. Through the smoke and chaos strode a familiar figure, his cybernetic eye glowing fiercely. Captain Marcus Stone, battered but unbroken, led a team of heavily armed troops into the hangar. "Sorry I'm late to the party," Stone growled, his weapon trained on Torin. "But I believe these two are coming with me." In the confusion that followed, Andrew grabbed Sarah's hand and made a dash for the nearest shuttle. As they clambered aboard, the hangar erupted into a full-scale firefight between Stone's rescue team and the Galactic Corp security forces. Andrew's hands flew over the shuttle's controls, bringing the engines online. "Hold on tight," he called to Sarah as he gunned the thrusters, sending them hurtling out of the hangar and into the star-studded void of space. But their ordeal was not nearly finished. As Andrew piloted the stolen shuttle towards the distant rescue fleet, a sleek, heavily armed vessel roared out of the asteroid base in hot pursuit. Dr. Torin's voice crackled over the comm system, cold and determined. "Did you really think I'd let you escape so easily?" he taunted. "You're mine, Mitchell. You and all the secrets you carry." As Andrew pushed the shuttle to its limits, weaving through a field of asteroids, Sarah closed her eyes and reached out with her empathic senses. She could feel Torin's burning willpower, his crew's mix of fear and loyalty. "Bank left," she suddenly shouted. Andrew complied without hesitation, and a barrage of energy blasts streaked past their starboard side. "How did you—" Andrew began, but Sarah cut him off. "I can sense their intentions," she explained quickly. "It's like I can see the battle unfolding before it happens." Working in perfect synchronization, Andrew and Sarah raced towards the safety of Captain Stone's ship, but Torin's vessel was gaining on them, its weapons systems charging for another volley. As the rescue fleet grew larger in their view screen, Andrew and Sarah knew the next few moments would determine not just their fate, but potentially the future of human-Trill relations and the balance of power in the galaxy. The chase continued, with Torin's ship closing in and the rescue fleet still agonizingly out of reach. Andrew's hands tightened on the controls, every fiber of his being focused on evading Torin's relentless pursuit. The shuttle bucked and shuddered as another volley of energy blasts streaked past, missing them by mere meters. "We can't keep this up much longer," Sarah said, her voice tight with tension. "The engines are redlining." Andrew's eyes sharp as he threw the shuttle into a tight spiral, narrowly avoiding a chunk of space debris. We don't have to outrun them forever, just long enough to reach Stone's fleet. As if in response to his words, the rescue ships grew larger in the view screen, their hulls gleaming against the star-studded backdrop of space. But Toran's vessel was closing fast, its weapons charging for another salvo. Suddenly, Andrew felt a strange tingling sensation in his fingertips. The shuttle's control panel flickered, and for a brief moment, he could sense the flow of energy through the ship's systems. "Sarah, I think I can," he began, but she cut him off. "Do it!" she shouted, her eyes wide. "Whatever you're thinking, do it now." Without fully understanding how, Andrew channeled his electromagnetic manipulation abilities into the shuttle systems. The engines roared to life with newfound power, and a shimmering energy field enveloped the hull. The shuttle lurched forward with incredible speed, leaving Toran's ship momentarily stunned in their wake. But the surge of power came at a cost. Warning lights flashed across the control panel as the shuttle's systems strained under the influx of energy. "We're going to make it," Sarah breathed, her eyes fixed on the approaching rescue fleet, but their reprieve was short-lived. Captain Stone's ships opened fire on Toran's vessel, disabling its weapons systems in a brilliant display of precision targeting. The attack, however, created a dangerous debris field directly in their path. Andrew's hands flew over the controls, weaving the shuttle through the treacherous obstacle course. Twisted metal and fractured hull plates spun past their viewports as he pushed the vessel to its limits. "Left!" Sarah shouted suddenly, her empathic senses picking up on an imminent threat. Andrew banked hard, narrowly avoiding a jagged piece of debris that would have torn through their hull. As they neared the edge of the debris field, a massive section of Toran's ship's outer hull loomed before them, blocking their path to safety. In that critical moment, Andrew made a split-second decision. "Hold on!" he yelled, gripping Sarah's hand tightly. Focusing all his concentration, he extended his phasing ability to encompass the entire shuttle. The world seemed to blur around them as they passed partially through the debris. For a heart-stopping moment, Andrew felt the resistance of solid matter against his power. Then, with a final push of will, they slipped past, emerging unscathed on the other side. Behind them, Toran's ship was forced to veer sharply to avoid the obstacle, giving Captain Stone's team the opening they needed. A shimmering tractor beam locked onto their shuttle, pulling them swiftly towards the safety of the rescue ship's hangar bay. As the adrenaline of their escape began to fade, Andrew and Sarah suddenly became aware of a strange sensation coursing through their bodies. A faint, pulsing energy radiated from their skin, interacting with the ship's systems in unexpected ways. "Andrew, what's happening to us?" Sarah asked, her voice a mix of wonder and concern. Before he could respond, the ship's communication system crackled to life, filling with a cacophony of voices and signals. Their life signs were being broadcast across a wide range of frequencies, reaching far beyond the confines of the rescue fleet. Captain Stone's gruff voice came over the shuttle's comm system. "Mitchell, Lauren, we're bringing you in. Brace for emergency docking procedures." As the shuttle was guided into the hangar bay, Andrew and Sarah exchanged a look of shared understanding. Their ordeal was nowhere near the end, and the changes they had undergone were only beginning to manifest. The moment their feet touched the deck of Stone's ship, alarms began blaring throughout the vessel. A harried-looking officer rushed up to them, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and concern. "Sir, ma'am," she said breathlessly, Your life signs, they're causing some kind of reaction with our systems, and we're picking up massive energy fluctuations from Trill Prime." Before they could process this information, Captain Stone strode into the hangar, his cybernetic eye glowing fiercely. "No time for explanations. We've just received emergency orders from Admiral Zhao. We're making an emergency jump to Trill Prime now." As if to punctuate his words, the ship lurched violently, the familiar disorientation of faster-than-light travel washing over them. Andrew stumbled, catching himself against a nearby bulkhead. As his hand made contact with the metal surface, he felt a surge of energy flow through him and into the ship's systems. "They need us back on Trill," Sarah said, her voice distant as if listening to something only she could hear. "The fungal network, It's responding to our presence. Alarms blared as the ship's engines strained against the demands of the emergency jump. Crew members rushed past, shouting orders and status reports as systems began to fail throughout the vessel. Andrew and Sarah looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. Without a word, they split up, each heading to a different section of the ship. As they moved, their enhanced abilities seemed to stabilize the failing systems around them. Andrew found himself in engineering, his hands moving instinctively over control panels, channeling his electromagnetic powers to maintain the ship's critical functions. In the medical bay, Sarah's empathic abilities soothed panicked crew members, allowing the medical staff to work efficiently amidst the chaos. As the ship hurtled through faster-than-light space, Andrew and Sarah's actions kept it from tearing itself apart. The crew watched in amazement as these two individuals, Human and Trill, worked in perfect harmony to save them all. Suddenly, with a final violent shudder, the ship dropped out of FTL. Through the viewports, the familiar blue-green orb of Trill Prime filled their vision. But the sight that greeted them was far from welcoming. A fleet of ships hung in orbit around the planet, their weapons charged and ready. Captain Stone's voice rang out over the ship-wide comm system, his tone grim. "All hands, battle stations. We've just jumped into a standoff. Isolationist forces are blocking our approach to the planet." As Andrew and Sarah rushed to the bridge, they could feel the tension radiating from every member of the crew. The fate of two worlds now hung in the balance, and they found themselves at the very center of the storm. Through the main view screen, they watched as Admiral Zhao's forces moved to intercept the isolationist fleet. The space between Trill Prime and its moons became a chessboard of opposing vessels, each side daring the other to make the first move. Captain Stone turned to Andrew and Sarah, his cybernetic eyes scanning them intently. "I hope you two are ready for this, because right now, you're the key to preventing an interstellar war." As if in response to his words, a transmission cut through the tense silence of the bridge. The face of Dax Ren, leader of the isolationist faction, appeared on the screen, his expression a mask of cold perseverance. "This is your final warning," Ren's voice boomed. "Any attempt to breach Trill Prime's atmosphere will be met with lethal force. The humans have no place here any longer." Andrew stepped forward, his eyes locked on the image of the man who sought to undo everything they had fought for. "We didn't come this far to be turned away now," he said, his voice low but filled with willpower. "One way or another, we're going home." As the standoff intensified and options dwindled, Andrew and Sarah knew that their next actions would shape the future of human-Trill relations forever. The question was, how could they break through the blockade and return to the planet's surface, where their presence was so desperately needed? The answer, they realized, might lie in the very changes that had brought them to this point. As the bridge crew scrambled to formulate a plan, Andrew and Sarah shared a silent look of understanding. Whatever came next, they would face it together, their fates now irrevocably intertwined with the future of Trill Prime. The tension on the bridge was palpable as Andrew and Sarah stood beside Captain Stone, facing the image of Dax Ren on the screen. The isolationist leader's ultimatum hung in the air, a dangerous promise of violence if they dared approach Trill Prime. Admiral Zhao's voice crackled over the comm system. "Captain Stone, I have a plan. It's risky, but it might be our only shot at getting Mitchell and Lauren to the surface." Stone's cybernetic eye whirred as he processed the information being transmitted. He turned to Andrew and Sarah, his expression grim. "We're going to use your abilities to punch a hole through their defenses. Are you up for it?" Andrew nodded, his heart made. Whatever it takes. Minutes later, they were aboard a sleek, modified shuttle. Captain Stone took the pilot's seat, his hands dancing over the controls as he prepared for launch. Andrew and Sarah strapped themselves in, exchanging a silent look of shared persistence. As the shuttle slipped out of the hangar, Andrew closed his eyes, focusing on the electromagnetic energy surrounding them. He could feel it pulsing, responding to his will. Sarah placed her hand on his arm, and suddenly his awareness expanded, their connection amplifying his abilities. "Now, Mitchell!" Stone barked as they approached the blockade. Andrew's eyes snapped open, crackling with energy. He thrust his hands forward, and a massive electromagnetic pulse erupted from the shuttle. The isolationist ship's sensors flickered and died, their targeting systems rendered useless. Stone seized the moment, his augmented reflexes guiding the shuttle through the chaos. They weaved between the disoriented ships, alarms blaring as they pushed the small craft to its limits. For a heartbeat, it seemed they might make it through unscathed. Then a series of impacts rocked the shuttle, throwing them violently in their seats. "Manual targeting!" Stone shouted, wrestling with the controls. They were prepared for this. The shuttle shuddered as it entered Trill Prime's atmosphere, red-hot plasma streaking past the viewports. Warning lights flashed across the console as the propulsion system failed, sending them into an uncontrolled descent. "We're coming in too hot," Stone growled, fighting to stabilize their trajectory. Andrew unstrapped himself, stumbling to the shuttle's wall. He pressed his palms against the metal, feeling the heat building up in the hull. Closing his eyes, he began to phase parts of the structure, reducing friction and dissipating the deadly heat. Sarah's mind reached out, intertwining with Andrew's consciousness. The shuttle's occupants gasped as a faint shimmering field enveloped the craft. The turbulence eased, the hull's temperature dropping to manageable levels. But they were still falling, the ground rushing up to meet them at terrifying speed. On the planet's surface, Dr. Elena Chen's eyes widened as she watched the shuttle's approach on her monitors. Her fingers flew across her terminal, sending urgent commands to the environmental control teams. "Redirect fungal growth to coordinates 47 Mark III, she ordered. "Maximum density. Create a cushion." The native fungus responded with explosive growth, forming a massive, undulating structure in the shuttle's path. As the craft plummeted towards the surface, the fungal network pulsed with energy, resonating with the unique radiation signature emanating from Andrew and Sarah. Inside the shuttle, alarms blared as the ground loomed ever closer. Stone's knuckles were white on the controls, his cybernetic eye calculating their slim chances of survival. "Brace for impact!" he roared. The shuttle slammed into the fungal cushion with bone-jarring force. The organic structure enveloped them, tendrils wrapping around the craft as it burrowed deep into the spongy mass. For several long seconds, the world spun in a kaleidoscope of motion and sound. Then abruptly, stillness. The shuttle's hatch hissed open and Andrew stumbled out, helping Sarah and Stone behind him. They stood on shaky legs, surrounded by a sea of iridescent fungal growth that stretched as far as the eye could see. "We made it," Sarah breathed, her eyes wide with disbelief. Stone activated his comm unit. "This is Captain Stone. We're on the ground, all alive." As the news of their arrival spread, the planet seemed to come alive around them. The fungal network pulsed with energy, its rampant growth visibly receding wherever Andrew and Sarah stepped. Dr. Chen arrived with a team of scientists, her face alight with excitement and curiosity. "Incredible," she murmured, scanning Andrew and Sarah with a handheld device. "Your presence is stabilizing the entire ecosystem. We need to get you to the research facility immediately." As they were ushered into waiting vehicles, Andrew caught a glimpse of the sky above. The isolationist ships were breaking formation, retreating from Trill Prime's orbit. "Look," he said, pointing upwards. "It's over." Sarah squeezed his hand, her empathic senses picking up the shift in the planet's mood. "No," she said softly. "It's just beginning." As their vehicles sped towards the research facility, the final hours of the referendum ticked away. Citizens across Trill Prime rushed to cast their votes, the dramatic events of the day reshaping public opinion with every passing minute. Andrew and Sarah sat in silence, their hands intertwined, feeling the pulse of the planet beneath them. Whatever the outcome, they knew their journey was not nearly finished. The true test of human-Trill relations, and their own transformed existence, lay ahead. Ahead lay in the balance of a single vote. As their vehicle approached the research facility, the streets of Trill Prime's capital city came alive with activity. Citizens poured out of their homes and workplaces, gathering around public screens displaying the referendum results in real time. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Andrew and Sarah exchanged a glance, their hands still intertwined. They could feel the pulse of the planet beneath them, a rhythmic thrumming that seemed to quicken with each passing moment. The fungal network, now stabilized by their presence, pulsed with a soft bioluminescence that painted the landscape in ethereal hues. Dr. Chen's communicator chirped, breaking the tense silence in the vehicle. She answered it with trembling hands, her eyes widening as she listened to the voice on the other end. After a moment, she ended the call and turned to face Andrew and Sarah. "It's official," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The referendum passed. The cultural exchange program will continue." The news hit them like a physical force. Sarah let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding, while Andrew's shoulders sagged with relief. Around them, the city erupted in celebration. Cheers echoed through the streets as trills and humans alike embraced, their joy bridging the gap between species. As they pulled up to the research facility, they were greeted by a sea of faces, scientists, diplomats, and curious onlookers. At the forefront stood Matriarch Zara and Admiral Zhao, their expressions a mix of relief and purpose. "We have much to discuss," Matriarch Zara said as Andrew and Sarah stepped out of the vehicle. "But first, let's get you two checked out properly." The next few hours passed in a blur of medical examinations and debriefings. Andrew and Sarah found themselves in a state-of-the-art medical bay, their bodies scanned and probed by an array of curious Trill and human doctors. Dr. Chen oversaw the proceedings, her excitement hardly restrained as she pored over the data streaming across her screens. "Fascinating," she muttered, eyes darting between Andrew and Sarah. "The mycelium enzyme has completely rewritten your genetic code. You're neither fully human nor Trill, but something new." As the medical team worked, Matriarch Zara and Admiral Zhao entered the room, their faces set with purpose. "We've come to a decision," Zhao announced. "In light of recent events and the referendum results, we're establishing a joint Human Trill Research Institute. Its primary focus will be studying the changes you've undergone and exploring the potential applications of the mycelium enzyme." Matriarch Zara nodded in agreement. "Dr. Chen will lead the institute, with Dr. Lana Zev as her Trill counterpart. We'd like you both to join as primary research subjects and advisors." Andrew and Sarah shared a look of surprise and excitement. Before they could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Dr. Chen rushed to a nearby console, her fingers flying across the controls. "The fungal network," she gasped. "It's expanding rapidly near the crash site." Without hesitation, Andrew and Sarah leapt to their feet. "We can help," Andrew said, his body already crackling with electromagnetic energy. They raced out of the medical bay, followed closely by Dr. Chen and a team of researchers. As they emerged from the facility, they saw the horizon pulsing with an eerie blue-green light. The fungal network was spreading at an alarming rate, threatening to engulf nearby structures. Sarah closed her eyes, reaching out with her empathic abilities. She gasped as she felt the network's presence in her mind, a vast, alien intelligence that responded to her touch. Andrew placed his hand on her shoulder, and suddenly their awareness expanded, merging into something greater than either of them alone. Together, they stretched out their hands towards the advancing fungal growth. Energy flowed from their bodies, visible as arcs of shimmering light that danced across the landscape. Where their power touched, the fungal network calmed, its rapid expansion slowing and then stopping altogether. The assembled crowd watched in awe as Andrew and Sarah worked in perfect synchronization, their movements fluid and purposeful. Within minutes, the crisis was averted, the fungal network once again stable and controlled. As they lowered their hands, exhausted but exhilarated, Dr. Chen approached them with a look of wonder on her face. "That was incredible," she breathed. "How did you do it?" Sarah smiled, still catching her breath. "We could feel it, Dr. Chen. The network, it's alive, in a way we never imagined, and somehow we can communicate with it." Andrew nodded in agreement. "It's like we're part of it now, and it's part of us. I think we've only scratched the surface of what's possible." Dr. Chen's eyes lit up with excitement. "This changes everything. The potential applications, ecosystem management, terraforming. We need to start studying this immediately." As the adrenaline of the moment began to fade, Andrew and Sarah found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Scientists swarmed around them, asking questions and taking readings. In the distance, they could see news crews setting up, eager to broadcast the latest developments to an anxious public. Amidst the chaos, Matriarch Zara approached them, her expression thoughtful. "It seems we made the right decision in establishing the Institute," she said. "Your abilities could be the key to solving not just our problems, but those of many worlds." Admiral Zhao nodded in agreement. "We've already received inquiries from other planets facing similar ecological challenges. They're interested in our eco-stabilizer technology." Andrew and Sarah exchanged a glance, the weight of their new responsibility settling on their shoulders. They had come to Trill Prime seeking adventure and scientific discovery. Now they found themselves at the forefront of a revolution that could reshape the galaxy. As the sun began to set on Trill Prime, casting long shadows across the stabilized fungal plains, Andrew and Sarah stood hand in hand, gazing out at the horizon. The future stretched before them, full of promise and uncertainty in equal measure. "Ready for our next big adventure?" Sarah asked, squeezing Andrew's hand. He smiled, feeling the familiar thrill of discovery coursing through him. "Always," he replied, "as long as we're in it together." With that, they turned back to the research facility, prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Joint Human Trill Research Institute was just the beginning. The true test of their abilities and the future of interspecies cooperation was yet to come. Come. As they stepped back into the research facility, Andrew and Sarah were met with a flurry of activity. Scientists and researchers bustled about, their excitement palpable in the air. Dr. Chen approached them, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "The Galactic Council delegation has just arrived. They're eager to see your abilities firsthand." Andrew and Sarah exchanged a nervous glance, but nodded in agreement. They followed Dr. Chen to a large observation room where a group of diverse alien beings stood waiting. The delegation members whispered amongst themselves, their eyes fixed on the human Trill pair. "Esteemed members of the Galactic Council," Dr. Chen began, "allow me to introduce Andrew and Sarah, our eco-stabilizers." A tall, blue-skinned alien stepped forward. "We've heard much about your accomplishments. Would you be willing to demonstrate your abilities?" Sarah took a deep breath and reached for Andrew's hand. As their fingers intertwined, they felt the familiar surge of energy coursing through them. Closing their eyes, they extended their awareness to the fungal network outside. The observation room's wall screens flickered to life, displaying real-time footage of the surrounding landscape. The assembled delegates gasped as they watched the fungal growth respond to Andrew and Sarah's silent commands, forming intricate patterns and structures across the terrain. "Remarkable," murmured a reptilian council member. "The level of control is unprecedented." For the next hour, Andrew and Sarah showcased the full range of their abilities, manipulating the fungal network with increasing precision and complexity. As the demonstration concluded, the council members erupted into excited chatter. The blue-skinned alien, who introduced himself as Ambassador Zorax, addressed Dr. Chen. "This is truly groundbreaking. The Galactic Council is prepared to offer substantial support to further your research." In the days that followed, the Human Trill Research Institute underwent a dramatic transformation. New wings were added to accommodate the influx of resources and personnel. Dr. Chen and Dr. Lana Zev, her Trill counterpart, worked tirelessly to expand their research capabilities. Andrew and Sarah found themselves at the center of an intensive study program. Day after day, they underwent a battery of tests designed to push the limits of their abilities. In one particularly grueling session, they stood in a specially designed chamber, their bodies connected to an array of sensors. "We're going to increase the range," Dr. Zev called out. "Try to maintain your connection to the network." Andrew gritted his teeth as he felt the familiar strain of reaching out to the distant fungal clusters. Sarah's grip on his hand tightened, and suddenly, something shifted in their shared awareness. It was as if a door had opened in their minds. Andrew found himself floating in a vast mental landscape, Sarah's presence beside him like a warm sun. Their thoughts and memories swirled together, forming a tapestry of shared consciousness. "Are you seeing this?" Sarah's voice echoed in his mind. "I'm not just seeing it," Andrew replied, awe coloring his thoughts. "I'm experiencing it. It's us." In the physical world, Dr. Chen and Dr. Zev watched in amazement as the readings on their instruments spiked. The fungal network responded with unprecedented speed and precision, forming complex structures faster than ever before. Neural fusion, Dr. Chen breathed, her fingers flying across her datapad. They've achieved a state of shared consciousness. As Andrew and Sarah emerged from their trance-like state, they found themselves surrounded by excited researchers. The discovery of their neural fusion ability opened up new avenues of research and possibilities for managing the fungal network. Over the following weeks, they honed this new skill, learning to process vast amounts of information and coordinate their actions with seamless efficiency. The research team documented every aspect of their progress, with Dr. Chen dubbing the phenomenon neural fusion in her official reports. Their newfound abilities didn't go unnoticed. As news spread of their success in reclaiming barren areas of Trill Prime, other worlds facing similar ecological crises reached out for help. The Trill government, working closely with human diplomats, established a program to send specially trained human Trill pairs to these planets. Andrew and Sarah found themselves taking on the role of mentors, helping to train these pairs in basic eco-stabilization techniques. Though none could match their level of ability, the program proved successful in implementing scaled-down versions of their methods on various worlds. As Trill Prime's status in the galactic community soared, the planet became a hub of interspecies cooperation and scientific advancement. The influx of alien visitors brought new ideas and technologies, sparking a cultural renaissance that touched every aspect of Trill society. However, not everyone welcomed these rapid changes. One evening, as Andrew and Sarah were leaving the Institute after a long day of training, they overheard a heated conversation between two Trill scientists. "Did you hear about the attack on the eco-stabilizer in the southern continent?" one whispered urgently. The other nodded grimly. "Dax Ren's group again. They're getting bolder." Andrew and Sarah exchanged concerned looks. They had heard rumors of a conservative faction opposing the human influence on Trill Prime, but this was the first concrete evidence of their activities. Their worries were confirmed the next day when Admiral Zhao called an emergency meeting. "We're establishing a joint human Trill security task force," he announced, his face grim. "Captain Stone will be leading the team." Marcus Stone stepped forward, his cybernetic eye gleaming. "Our primary objective is to protect the Institute and key environmental installations. We're implementing advanced security measures, including bioscanners calibrated to detect unauthorized mycelium enzyme signatures." As the meeting concluded, Andrew pulled Sarah aside. "We need to be careful," he murmured. "This situation could escalate quickly." Sarah nodded, her eyes filled with grit. "We'll face it together, whatever comes." That night, as they lay in bed in their quarters, Andrew and Sarah found solace in each other's arms. As their passion intensified, they felt the familiar surge of power coursing through them. Suddenly, the room was bathed in an ethereal light. They broke apart, startled, and rushed to the window. Outside, the night sky was alive with shimmering curtains of light, an aurora-like phenomenon dancing above the Institute. Did we do that?" Sarah asked, her voice a mix of awe and concern. Andrew nodded slowly, realizing the full implications of their growing powers. "We need to tell Dr. Chen about this. These surges. We need to learn to control them." As they watched the fading lights in the sky, both Andrew and Sarah knew that their journey was nowhere near the end. New challenges lay ahead, both in mastering their evolving abilities and in navigating the complex political landscape of Trill Prime. But as long as they faced these challenges together, they were ready for whatever the future might hold. But as long as they faced these challenges together, they were ready for whatever the future might hold. Their moment of quiet reflection was shattered by the sudden blare of alarms. Red emergency lights bathed the corridor outside their quarters, casting an ominous glow through the window. "What's happening?" Sarah gasped, already moving to grab her uniform. Andrew's hand flew to his comm device. "This is Andrew. Status report?" Captain Stone's gruff voice crackled through the speaker. "We're under attack. Dax Ren's group has launched a coordinated assault on the Institute. Multiple explosions reported. Get to the Synergium lab immediately." As they sprinted through the chaos-filled hallways, the sound of distant gunfire echoed through the building. Researchers and the staff members rushed past them, seeking shelter from the onslaught. They reached the Synergium lab just as another explosion rocked the facility, sending tremors through the floor. Dr. Chen was already there, frantically working to secure critical data and samples. "Thank goodness you're here," she said, relief evident in her voice. "We need to protect the Synergium research at all costs." Andrew and Sarah nodded, immediately linking hands and extending their awareness to the fungal networks surrounding the institute. They felt the tremors of the attack reverberating through the delicate mycelial threads, threatening to destabilize the entire ecosystem. With practiced synchronization, they channeled their combined energy into creating a protective barrier around the lab. The air shimmered as an iridescent force field materialized, enveloping the precious research materials. Just as they completed the protective measure, the lab door burst open. A group of armed Trill rebels stormed in, their weapons trained on the trio. "Step away from the consoles," the lead attacker ordered, his voice cold and determined. Andrew and Sarah exchanged a quick glance, their minds already merging into the familiar state of neural fusion. In an instant, their shared consciousness expanded, allowing them to perceive every minute detail of their surroundings with crystal clarity. As the first attacker lunged forward, Andrew sidestepped with inhuman speed, his movements perfectly complemented by Sarah's. They moved as one, anticipating and countering each assault with fluid grace. Dr. Chen watched in awe as the couple seemed to dance around their assailants, always one step ahead. Their movements were so perfectly coordinated that it appeared as if they were reading their opponents' minds. Suddenly, the lab doors slid open once more, revealing a tall, imposing Trill with a cybernetic eye, Dax Ren himself. He strode into the room, flanked by two guards carrying what looked like modified eco-stabilizer devices. "Impressive," Ren said, his voice a mixture of admiration and disdain. "But let's see how you fare against your own technology." With a nod from Ren, the guards activated their devices. A high-pitched whine filled the air as waves of energy pulsed towards Andrew and Sarah. For a moment, the couple faltered, feeling their connection to the fungal network weaken. But their neural fusion state had evolved beyond what Ren had anticipated. Instead of breaking their bond, the energy from the stolen eco-stabilizers seemed to flow into them, amplifying their abilities. Andrew and Sarah's eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them. Together they reached out with their minds, tapping into the Institute's power systems. The lights flickered as energy surged through the building's conduits, guided by their combined will. Every piece of equipment in the lab hummed to life simultaneously. Screens lit up with cascading data, and containment units glowed with otherworldly light. The pulse of energy spread outward, racing through the fungal network that crisscrossed Trill Prime. Ren's eyes widened in shock as he felt a strange sensation wash over him. For a brief, intense moment, his mind was flooded with a kaleidoscope of emotions and memories, not just his own, but those of every Trill on the planet. He saw through the eyes of the humans he had vilified, felt their wonder and excitement at the discoveries they had made on this alien world. The same phenomenon affected every Trill across the planet. In that instant of shared consciousness, they experienced the hopes, fears, and dreams of their entire species, as well as those of their human allies. As the wave of empathy swept through the attacking force, weapons clattered to the ground. Many of the rebels sank to their knees, overwhelmed by the sudden influx of shared experiences. Dax Ren himself stumbled backward, his face a mask of shock and remorse. The weight of his actions, seen through the eyes of countless others, proved too much to bear. He collapsed to the floor, his cybernetic eye flickering erratically. Andrew and Sarah, still connected in their neural fusion state, gently guided the fungal network to grow around the incapacitated attackers, forming living restraints that held them securely but comfortably. As the immediate threat subsided, they slowly separated their minds, emerging from the fusion state with a shared sense of exhaustion and accomplishment. They turned to each other, their eyes reflecting the profound nature of what they had just experienced. Dr. Chen approached them, her face a mixture of awe and concern. "What you just did, it's beyond anything we've ever seen. Are you all right?" Andrew nodded, still catching his breath. "We're okay, but I think we've just taken the first step into a much larger world." Sarah squeezed his hand, her voice filled with wonder. The neural network, it connected everyone on the planet, even if just for a moment we all saw through each other's eyes. As the sounds of the ongoing security operation echoed through the building, the trio looked out the lab window at the Trill Prime skyline. The first rays of dawn were breaking over the horizon, bathing the fungal plains in a soft golden light. In that moment of calm after the storm, they knew that nothing would ever be the same. The attack on the Institute had triggered a chain of events that would reshape not just Trill Prime, but potentially the entire galaxy. As they watched the sunrise, Andrew and Sarah stood hand in hand, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced their greatest challenge yet and emerged victorious, but they knew that this was just the beginning. The true implications of their actions and the response of the galactic community remained to be seen. Captain Stone's voice crackled over the comm system, breaking the moment of reflection. The situation is under control. All personnel report to the main atrium for debriefing. Andrew, Sarah, and Dr. Chen exchanged determined looks. It was time to face the aftermath of the attack and the dawn of a new era for Trill Prime and beyond.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.